They called it my party. My name was on the invitation. My face was on the balloon arch near the front door. But when I walked into that ballroom, I realized within 60 seconds that nothing about that night was meant for me. That was the night I stopped begging for a seat at a table that was never going to have my name on it. And everything that happened after that. It started right there, in a rented event hall in Charlotte, North Carolina, surrounded by people who looked right through me like I was a ghost at my own birthday. My name is Linda. And this is the story of how I walked out of the worst night of my life and, 1 year later, watched the people who hurt me sit in the rubble of the mess they made while I stood on the other side of it, free. Stay with me. Because this one doesn't end the way you expect. Everything broke. I grew up in a house where the rules were simple, as long as you understood who they really applied to. There were 4 of us, my mom, Patricia, my dad, Gerald, my older sister, Vanessa, and me. Vanessa is 3 years older than me. She was always the one who got the longer hug, the bigger slice, the louder applause at the school play. I told myself for years that I was imagining it. Kids do that. They convince themselves that the imbalance they feel every single day is just sensitivity, just them being dramatic. I was not being dramatic. Vanessa had her 18th birthday celebrated the way most kids only dream about. My parents rented a rooftop venue downtown. They flew in her best friend from out of state. There was a DJ, a photo booth, a 3-tier cake, and a slideshow that made half the room cry. I was 15 at the time. I sat at a corner table and told myself that when my turn came, it would be like that too. I held on to that thought for 3 years. I kept it quiet like something precious. I didn't ask for much, I'm not someone who needs the spotlight. But 18 felt important. It felt like a threshold. My parents had even said it out loud, on more than one occasion. When you turn 18, we'll do something special for you too, Linda. I had those words memorized. I returned to them the way you return to something you trust. I should have known better than to trust them. And if you already see where this is going, if you've ever been the one who got less, always, no matter how quietly you waited, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Because you are not alone in this, and I promise, this story ends somewhere worth staying for. Let me paint you a picture of what normal looked like in our house. When I made honor roll in 9th grade, my parents took us out to dinner. Vanessa spent the whole meal talking about a role she'd gotten in a local theater production. By the time the check came, my achievement had dissolved into the air like it had never happened. Nobody mentioned it again. When I got accepted to the youth journalism program at my high school, something only 5 students were selected for each year, my mom smiled and said, "That's nice, honey." Vanessa got a new laptop that same week because she said she needed it for her theater work. I'm not telling you this to make Vanessa sound like a monster. I want to be fair. The truth is, my sister knew exactly what she was doing, but she had learned the behavior from our parents. They had created this dynamic. They fed it. They kept it alive because Vanessa was louder, more demanding, and more willing to throw a fit when she didn't get what she wanted. I was the quiet one. And in families like mine, quiet gets you overlooked. Every time. By the time I was 17, I had stopped expecting fairness. I just wanted the one thing they had promised me. The one thing they had said, with their own mouths, was mine. My 18th birthday. The planning started about 4 months before my birthday in March. My mom sat me down and asked what I wanted. I told her nothing extravagant. A nice venue, some close friends, good music, maybe a photo corner. Simple. Clean. Mine. She nodded. She wrote things down. It felt real. Then, about 6 weeks before the date, the energy in the house started shifting. Vanessa had turned 21 that January, a milestone, sure, but one she had already celebrated with a weekend trip to Nashville with her college friends. Somehow, though, she started talking about how her 21st hadn't felt complete. How she'd always regretted that she didn't have a big family party. I watched my parents listen to her. I watched their faces soften in the way they always did when Vanessa wanted something. I told myself it had nothing to do with my birthday. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, my mom called me into the kitchen and sat down across from me with the careful expression she wore when she was about to say something she already knew was wrong. She told me that since they were already renting a venue and putting together a party, Vanessa had asked if she could share the celebration. A joint party, she said. 2 daughters, 1 night, how beautiful. I stared at her. But it's my 18th, I said. She told me that Vanessa had missed out on a proper 21st, and that sharing would be generous of me, and that family was about compromise. I asked her when it had ever been Vanessa's turn to compromise. She didn't answer that. I agreed to the joint party. I want to be honest about that. I said yes because I thought there was still enough room for me. I thought sharing meant exactly that, half and half. I even told myself it might be nice, having a big party that celebrated both of us. I was not prepared for what sharing actually meant in my family. Over the next 3 weeks, every decision that got made about the party leaned toward Vanessa. The color scheme, her favorite blush and gold instead of the deep green and white I'd asked for. The playlist, curated around her era, her music, her memories. The seating chart placed Vanessa at the center table with her college friends, and I was tucked near the side near the gift table, almost like a hostess rather than a guest of honor. The cake. Oh, the cake. There was supposed to be 1 cake with both our names. What arrived on the planning call was a 3-tier custom cake designed around Vanessa's aesthetic, floral, gold leaf, monogrammed with her initial, and a small single-layer sheet cake for me pushed off to the side table. When I pointed this out, my mother said, "It's still a cake, Linda. Don't make everything into an issue." The slideshow was the moment I nearly walked away from the whole thing before it even happened. The planner sent me a preview link 2 days before the party. I clicked it open in my bedroom, alone, while rain tapped against the window outside. 42 slides. I counted. 36 were photos of Vanessa. 6 were photos of me, and 2 of those 6 had Vanessa in them too. I sat there in the dark of my room for a long time. I thought about crying. I thought about calling my mom. Instead, I opened my phone's notes app and I started writing down every decision that had been made, every conversation, every promise that had been broken or bent. I didn't know what I was going to do with that list yet. I just knew I needed it. The night of the party, I wore the dress I had picked out months before. It was a deep emerald green, the color I had asked for that got replaced by blush and gold. I wore it anyway. On purpose. I walked into that ballroom and I want you to feel this with me. There was a giant banner near the entrance that said "Happy Birthday, Vanessa" in gold script. Underneath it, in significantly smaller letters, almost like an afterthought, "and Linda." And Linda. After 18 years of being an Linda, I was still an Linda at my own birthday party. I found my seat. I smiled at relatives. I hugged my grandmother, who squeezed both my hands and whispered, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." That nearly broke me right there. Kindness in the middle of humiliation hits differently. The MC, a family friend my parents had hired, opened the night with a speech that lasted nearly 10 minutes. He talked about Vanessa's journey, her theater work, her college achievements, her personality. He turned to me at the end and said, "And of course, happy 18th to Linda as well." He moved on before the applause even finished. Then came the slideshow. The same slideshow I had previewed in my bedroom 2 nights before. I sat in the audience and watched myself disappear, slide by slide, while Vanessa laughed and pointed at her own photos and my relatives said, "Oh, look at her." And then Vanessa stood up uninvited, unannounced, took the microphone from the MC, and began giving a speech. A long speech. About herself, her life, what 21 meant to her. She didn't mention me once. I looked at my parents. My father was smiling. My mother was wiping a proud tear from the corner of her eye. I picked up my evening bag from the back of my chair. I stood up quietly. I walked through the ballroom, past the blush and gold decorations, past the 3-tier cake with Vanessa's initial, past the banner that made me an afterthought. I pushed through the double doors and stepped out into the parking lot, where the night air was cool and still and finally quiet. My aunt found me by my car about 10 minutes later. She put her arm around me without saying a word. She didn't need to say anything. She had watched the whole thing too. I called an Uber to my friend Cassandra's house. I didn't go back inside. I didn't call my parents that night. I didn't answer when they called me. And in the morning, when my mother texted to say I had ruined the evening by leaving early, I read it once, set my phone face down on Cassandra's kitchen table, and made myself a cup of coffee. If you've been in a situation like this, where you finally hit the wall and realize that the people who were supposed to protect you have been slowly, steadily choosing someone else your entire life, then you know what that morning felt like. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Almost calm. Like something had finally, permanently shifted inside me. I was 18. Legally an adult. No longer dependent on anyone's permission to live my life. And right there, at Cassandra's kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a phone full of unanswered messages, I made a decision that I have not regretted for a single day since. I was done pleading. Done shrinking. Done waiting for a table setting that was never going to have my name on it. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to send a long angry text. I was going to do something much more powerful. I was going to build something. Without them. And I was going to let that be the loudest thing I ever said. Over the next several months, I made a series of quiet, deliberate decisions. The first was distance. I moved out of my parents' house 2 months after the party. I had been saving money from my part-time job at a medical billing office for over a year, partly because I'm naturally careful with money, and partly, if I'm honest, because some part of me always knew I was going to need an exit. I found a small apartment 20 minutes away. I signed the lease on a Tuesday morning and didn't tell my parents until the boxes were already in my car. My mother called it impulsive. My father said I was being dramatic. Vanessa texted me a single message, "You're really doing this over a party?" I didn't respond to any of them. The second decision was my career. I had always wanted to go into healthcare administration. I'd been working toward it quietly while everyone in my family assumed I had no direction. I enrolled in an accelerated certification program. I kept showing up to my job. I got promoted to a billing coordinator position within 4 months. My supervisor told me I was one of the sharpest people she'd worked with in years. I printed that email out and put it on my refrigerator. The third decision was my community. Cassandra introduced me to a group of young professional women in Charlotte, a networking group that met twice a month. I started attending. I made real friendships, the kind where people show up for you because they genuinely want to, not because they share your last name. I can't explain how much that healed in me. My family knew almost none of this was happening. I kept my social media quiet. I didn't broadcast my wins. I let them assume I was struggling, the way they always assumed I would without their support. I was not struggling. And if you're in that season right now, the building season, the quiet season where nobody sees what you're doing yet, keep going. I'm telling you from the other side, it is worth every single silent month. Hit that subscribe button and stay with me, because the next part of this story is where everything comes together. A year is a long time when you're intentional with it. By the time 11 months had passed since my birthday party, this was my life. I had my own apartment, fully furnished. I had a stable, growing career in healthcare admin with a salary that would have shocked my parents if they'd known. I had friends who celebrated me, real celebrations, the kind where people show up because they want to, not because they feel obligated. I had started taking a community college course on the side, working toward my associate's degree in healthcare management. I was, for the first time in my life, genuinely happy. My contact with my family had dwindled to occasional texts and a few hollow holiday visits where everyone pretended everything was normal. I had forgiven them not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness is not the same as trust. It's not the same as closeness. You can let go of the weight of someone's actions and still choose not to carry them with you anymore. But the peace I had built didn't last without a disruption. It never does. Because Vanessa found out. It started with a mutual friend, a woman named Deja, who knew both of us from high school. Deja ran into me at a professional event in Uptown Charlotte, and we caught up for about 20 minutes. She was warm and genuine, and she told me I looked incredible and asked what I'd been up to. I gave her the honest version: new apartment, career promotion, the coursework, the networking group. I did not know she would carry any of that back to Vanessa. I don't think she meant harm by it. But she did. Vanessa called my mother the next day. According to my aunt, who has always been honest with me, Vanessa was not happy. She kept saying I was showing off and acting like I'm better than everyone. She said it wasn't fair that I had moved out and built this life and nobody had helped me, and yet here I was doing fine, like the family drama hadn't touched me at all. She said, and this is the part that revealed everything, she said it wasn't right that I was succeeding off the backs of everything the family gave me. My aunt paused when she told me that part. She let it hang in the air between us. What exactly did they give you, Linda? She asked. Neither of us had an answer. Because the truth was, everything I had built alone. With my own savings, my own decisions, my own work, while they spent a year assuming I was floundering. But Vanessa didn't stop at the phone call to my mother. She made it a campaign. She started reaching out to relatives, reshaping the narrative. In her version, I had abandoned the family after the birthday party, a birthday party she described as a beautiful, thoughtful celebration that I had stormed out of. She left out the banner, the cake, the slideshow, the speech where she stood up with the microphone and never said my name. She posted a vague message on social media, the kind that doesn't name names, but everyone in the family knew exactly what it meant, about people who take family for granted and act ungrateful after everything they've been given. The comments filled with relatives I hadn't heard from in months, agreeing with her, validating her pain. And here is the thing that I want you to understand about this moment. The old Linda, the one who spent 18 years shrinking, adjusting, making herself smaller to keep the peace, she would have been destroyed by that post. She would have been up at 2 a.m., drafting a response, trying to defend herself to people who had already decided. I am not that Linda anymore. 3 things happened in close succession that I did not engineer but absolutely did not stop. The first, my promotion at work became public knowledge in a way I hadn't expected. My company posted a short spotlight piece on their internal newsletter about our billing department's record quarter and mentioned me by name as a key contributor. A colleague who happened to be connected on LinkedIn with one of my cousins shared it. Within 48 hours, it had made its way through the family grapevine. The second, my aunt, the same one who had sat with me in the parking lot on my birthday night, had been quietly collecting her own receipts for years. She had saved her own messages, her own observations. When Vanessa's social media campaign started pulling extended family members into the conflict, my aunt had a quiet, private conversation with my grandmother. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply told the truth. About the banner. About the slideshow. About the cake. About the MC's 2-sentence acknowledgement of me at my own birthday party. She showed my grandmother the photos she had taken that night, including one she had snapped of the banner, which clearly showed the size difference between Happy Birthday, Vanessa, and Linda underneath. My grandmother called my mother directly after that conversation. I don't know exactly what was said. I only know that my mother called me the following evening, and for the first time in a very long time, she sounded small. The third thing, Vanessa, in the middle of her campaign, made the mistake of escalating publicly at a family gathering I was not even present for, a birthday dinner for my uncle. She apparently spent a significant portion of the evening venting about me, which my younger cousins overheard and found uncomfortable, and which my uncle, a quiet, steady man who had always been fair, addressed directly by telling her that airing family grievances at his birthday dinner was not something he was going to sit quietly through. Vanessa left early. In tears. The family sat in a silence that said everything. None of this was something I did. I want to be clear about that. I had not made any calls, sent any messages, or posted a single word publicly. I had simply built my life, told the truth when asked directly, and let the architecture of what my family had actually done hold its own weight. The truth, it turns out, is very heavy. Especially when you've been stacking it up for years. My mother and I had a real conversation for the first time. Not a warm, tearful reconciliation. I want to be honest with you about that. It wasn't a movie moment. It was two people sitting across from each other with a table's worth of uncomfortable facts between them. She told me she hadn't realized how much of my birthday had been taken over. I don't know if that's true. I think she knew more than she admitted. But I also think that's as close to an acknowledgement as I was going to get, and I decided to take it. I told her that I loved her. I told her that I was not interested in punishing anyone or relitigating the past. I told her that I had built a life I was proud of, and I was going to keep living it, and that she was welcome in it, but on terms that included basic respect for who I was and what I had accomplished. She cried. I held her hand. Then I drove home to my apartment, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at my kitchen window for a long time looking out at the city lights. Vanessa and I have not had a direct conversation since. Not out of hostility, at least not on my end. Some distances, once created, are also protective. I don't wish her anything bad. I genuinely don't. But I also don't feel an obligation to close a gap that she created with years of behavior that my parents enabled and my own silence allowed to continue. My relationship with my parents is rebuilding, slowly. My father has surprised me. He reached out more genuinely than I expected, and in his own quiet way, he has acknowledged that things were not balanced. That means something. It doesn't erase the past, but it means something. My grandmother calls me every Sunday now. She has for the past several months. We talk for an hour sometimes. She tells me she is proud of me. I believe her. I want to tell you where I am right now, because I think that matters. I have my apartment. I have a career that is growing in a direction I chose. I have friendships that are real and reciprocal. I have a relationship with myself that I had to build from scratch, the version of me who knows her own worth not because someone else confirmed it, but because she earned it quietly, on a Tuesday morning, at a kitchen table in her best friend's house, with a cup of coffee and an unanswered phone. I am not perfectly healed. I want to be honest with you about that too. There are still moments when I feel the old ache, when a family gathering happens and I notice the dynamic, when a holiday passes and I grieve the family I always wanted rather than the one I have. Healing is not a straight line. It is messy and slow, and sometimes it looks like progress and sometimes it loops back on itself. But I am no longer and Linda. I know that. And nobody who matters in my life sees me that way either. Here is the thing I wish someone had told me when I was 15, sitting at that corner table at Vanessa's 18th birthday party, telling myself that my time was coming. The people who underestimate you are not the authors of your story. They are just characters in it. You do not need a dramatic confrontation to reclaim your life. You do not need to burn anything down. You do not need to convince anyone that you were wronged before you are allowed to heal. You can simply decide, quietly, completely, on an ordinary morning that you are going to build the life you deserve, and then you can go do exactly that. The hardest part is not the building. The hardest part is staying quiet long enough to let the work speak. Because eventually, it always does. Vanessa's meltdown was not something I caused. It was something she caused, the moment she looked at what I had built and couldn't tolerate that I had done it without her, without them, without asking permission or waiting for a party that would finally put my name on the banner the right size. She couldn't stand that the story didn't end the way she expected. I understand that now. And I find, more than anything, that I feel sad for her. Not pity, pity is condescending. Just sadness. Because she put so much energy into keeping me small, and the only person that ever truly diminished was herself. I walked out of my own birthday party the night I turned 18. And I never stopped walking, straight into the life I built for myself. If this story hit something in you, if you've ever been the and in a sentence that was supposed to be yours, please leave a comment, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you're here for the next one. Because I'm just getting started. And so are you.